Good day, and what a mixed day it has been today. When I woke up, I thought, gosh, there's a lot of rustling in the street. What's that? And it was wind. It was really, really strong, gusty wind. I thought, I didn't know that wind was forecast for today. And then I heard the rain as well. And even though we've got fantastic, bright sunshine now with blue skies and lovely white billowy clouds, this morning it was grey and dismal. When Richard left for work, about 10 minutes later, so he must have just got to work, the heavens opened and boy, did it chuck it down. And it's done that throughout the day up to, I think, about 12:30, something like that. It's now going on to nearer 4:30, and that wind is really, really there. There's no particular damage on the plot. I did notice my polytunnel was open and my shed door was open. So I don't think I shut either of those yesterday. But what I've been doing today is I've been checking on our Brussels sprouts, and you may remember that we used Grazer's cabbage white and aphid spray, which is a deterrent. We used that earlier in the year, and we've had so little damage on our brassicas this year, particularly the Brussels sprouts, from cabbage whites and aphids. You always get some aphids, those white ones that when you shake the plant they fly off, but nothing, no really damaging aphids like we've had in years before, or cabbage white caterpillars. But what we have had is snails. I mean, for God's sake, the snails this year. We had a relatively mild winter with just a coal patch in March, and I don't think that has killed off the eggs of slugs and snails. It wasn't a hard enough cold winter to do that. And they have just adored the brassicas this year, particularly the Brussels sprouts with those really nice, neat tops to them. So, you know what? I know that the Grazer's cabbage white, caterpillar and aphid spray worked as a deterrent. So I think Vivi's used this. I got some slugs and snails deterrent. Now, again, this is a deterrent. I'm not quite sure how it works, but what it isn't is it isn't damaging to wildlife. So I think the leaves take up this mixture, which gets diluted. So there's, what's in here, 350 mil, and I think you use 30 mil per spraying. So I use 2 capfuls, which is 30 mil, to do all of our brassicas. So that will do for 10 sprays. And considering that organic Brussels sprouts are likely to be pretty expensive this year, I think it's good value. I think this is about £9, something like that, where we got it from. But it's a deterrent. So I took all the snails off that I could see, and then I gave the whole of the plant, obviously the leaves, a really good spray. So fingers crossed that that will act as a deterrent. I have noticed that of the 2 Brussels sprouts I'm thinking of leaving to go to seed, one has not been attacked by slugs and snails as much as any of the others. So I'm thinking that I've now honed down my choice of which one I'm going to keep for seed saving. So I will harvest from that, and then next year, i.e. calendar year, I'll let it flower, I'll let it form seed pods, let those seed pods dry and save seed from those. Because what I'm thinking is, if all of the others, well, I think there's about 10 there, if 9 of them have been, in fact 8, because there are 8, have been pretty heavily attacked by slugs and snails, but 2 of them haven't, and the one of the ones that I'm thinking about seed saving is one of those 2 that haven't, then maybe that one for seed saving would be a good idea, because it might be more bitter. Who knows? Maybe the Brussels sprouts will be more bitter. Who knows? We'll have to see whether they are or not. But yeah, I got this Grazers and I sprayed it on, and fingers crossed. I sprayed it on after the rain, and it does say spray every sort of like 7 to 10 days, something like that. And if you get, it's supposed to get absorbed by the leaf, by the brassica leaf, in fact by any green leaf, any fleshy green leaf. So you can, somebody said to me the other day, can you use it on lettuce? And I said, well, I think so, because it says here, safe to apply on all edible and ornamental plants. I think it does say in the instructions, make sure it's outside. And of course, it's not harmful to us. So that's good. I'm wondering whether it comes down to taste. I'm going to have to drop Grazers an email and ask them whether it's something to do with taste or not, because it is a deterrent. And then let me then go on, I'm going to grab it up here, to organic slug pellets. So many of us use organic slug pellets. We use them really sparingly, and we will use them in areas where we think hedgehogs and other creatures, including the cat going in front of my shed at the moment, are not going to get to them. So when I have netted in brassicas, I will use them in the netted area, within the polytunnel, within our tall raised beds, rather than within the edge beds. We use them sparingly. Don't scatter them, you know, like hundreds and thousands, because that is not how they're supposed to be used. However, even though these are certified organic, and any organic slug pellet or natural slug pellet that you see may be organic, I found out from doing some research, i.e. I Googled, that actually these aren't great. So they're better than they're better than those really harmful ones that you can get. But the problem with these, and it's something that I've thought about for quite a while, is they do actually kill the slugs and snails by interfering with their digestive system, and they stop feeding. That's the process that happens. And in here is, what's the active ingredient? Gosh, I always forget. Ferric phosphate, which occurs naturally in the soil. However, the active ingredient is ferric phosphate, but there are various inactive ingredients that aren't listed, which apparently really do damage and can actually really affect the soil environment, and can actually lead to the deaths of worms and other creatures. Clearly, this doesn't just affect the digestive system of the slugs and snails. And in fact, there is a record that I saw online without any verification to it, to say that a child eating, you know, a small handful of these should be rushed to hospital. I know that's the same with many other things, but you know what? It just goes to show that when we talk about organic, we really need to be careful and understand what organic can mean. I mean, it's like other things we use, like neem oil to keep aphids off. Yes, the neem oil is organic, but is the actual process of using neem oil in a spray to keep bugs and other creatures off our plants, is that actually organic, or are we in one way or another harming the environment that we are trying to maintain? So Am I going to stop using organic slug pellets? I think it's unlikely, but I'm going to use them even more judiciously than I have done in the past. And of course, this whole tub, which I think I've had for 4 or 5 years, it's empty. In fact, it's not, because there's some in a glass jar. That has lasted a long time for £4, £5, £6. This is more expensive, but is it actually the better way to go? And other people obviously use beer traps, but the beer does cost as well. Vivi's tried yeast, and that I'm not quite sure whether it worked or not, but again, you're buying yeast. What one person I know does use effectively is she uses sourdough starter in her garden, and she finds that that does bring the slugs and snails to it, because the smell attracts slugs and snails, particularly slugs, and she then pops over with her torch at night, picks them off and puts them onto the compost bin. Maybe she does something else with them, but she does find that the sourdough starter does work. So maybe that's something for us to try next year. Right, I'm going to leave it there for this first segment of A Week at the Plot for this week. Quite a long one, sorry about that. But I'll see you very soon for another segment. See you then. Bye. A few months ago, I said to one of our neighbours, oh, when you cut back that lavender that has the sort of serrated leaf, could you keep some for me? Because I'd love to make some into cuttings. And sure enough, I got a knock on the door today, and here is a bunch of lavender, which is absolutely lovely. It's lovely for me in particular because there's lots of pieces that can be used. Let me just undo this. Lots of pieces that can be used for cuttings. All nicely tied up. Oh, sorry. Let's separate out. Looky here. Cutting material, cutting material, cutting material. Oh, there's so much. And here, lots. What you can do here is just, in fact, I tell you what, let me get some pots and let's do some cuttings now. Okay, we're going to make cuttings. So we've got a piece of trimmed back growth from our neighbour here, a stick, thin, narrow stick, a pot of multi-purpose compost. In fact, this one, the compost has been used before, so I'm reusing compost that has been used before. And then I'm using organic rooting powder, but if you don't have any, you can do this without rooting powder. And simply, I'm tearing that bit off, stripping leaves off, putting into the rooting powder, other end, making a hole, putting my cutting in like that, and pushing the compost around. So I'm just tearing that off, stripping the leaves back, hormone rooting powder, make a hole, pop that in, press that down, strip it off, take the leaves off, take a few more off. You don't want too many leaves at the top here. hormone rooting powder, make a hole, in it goes, press it down, and then finally rip that off. That bit's already broken, I'm not going to worry about that. Strip leaves off, hormone rooting powder, make a hole. You're not making a hole right to the bottom, and then press it down. Excellent. With these are longer strips, as you can see, and what I'm going to do is cut these into 3, or cut this here, let me move that one, cut this one into 3, so I'll get 3 cuttings out of this. But because this here has already been cut off, before I dunk that in the rooting powder, I'm going to give it a snip off with my nails and then dunk it in, because this bit here will have already dried back. So in fact, I'm most probably going to snip it here, like that. Take that off, strip them back. Sorry, I'm not doing it very well, am I? I'm going to cut that one back to there. Let's take those off. So as you can see, into the hormone rooting powder. I had another pot ready. Sorry for the wobble. Not right to the bottom. In it goes. Press it down. So again, this is another bit of it. I'm going to just break that off like that. Do that. Into there. Hole in there, not to the bottom. Pop that in. Press it down. Where's my last bit? There it is. That's my last bit of the same one. Strip the leaves off. Into the hormone rooting powder. Make a hole, not to the bottom. In it goes. Press right in. And let's complete that one. We've got another bit. Yeah. Here's a bit here. Take that off. Strip it back. Well, I'm going to break that one because I think that one might have dried a little bit. It's important to make sure that the bit you're putting into the bottom has not dried. And in fact, that the leaves you're stripping off haven't either. There we are. That is 8 cuttings done. I've got more to do here, as you can see. I'm going to get on and do those in exactly the same way as I've just shown you here. There we are. 20 variously sized cuttings from a neighbour that were going to be going into their green waste. I expect maybe around 50% or more of these to strike. That means make root. And then when they do, what I will do in the spring, late spring, is I will pop them on individually. So these 4, if these 4 should all root, I'll literally split the pot like that and pot on the lavender plants individually. And in fact, another plot neighbour down here has got a thornless blackberry, which you may remember we did cuttings from, I think, a year ago. And I'm going to go and take a huge branch from that and do exactly the same thing as I've done here. And you can do this with rosemary, sage, so many different types of cuttings will work this way. And is it a good time to do it at this time of year? I find it is. And in fact, you know what? When I take cuttings most times of the year in the spring or the autumn, I find they usually work. If some of these bend back, like you can see this one is, don't worry about that. just make sure that the compost stays moist, and fingers crossed in the spring we'll have 8, 10 or more plants from these cuttings. So using spent compost, using hormone rooting powder, which I've had for about 5 years, using cuttings from a neighbour, I've got new plants. Isn't that wonderful? This just shows you don't need to rush out to the Lidls and the Aldis and the Sainsbury's in the spring and buy packs of their lavenders. If you can find somebody that's cutting back their lavender at this time of year, then ask them if you can have the cuttings. Make cuttings like I've done here, and by June next year you'll have your first flowers developing on new plants that you started off the process of propagating today. Right, I'm going to leave it there. See you again very soon. Bye. Good day. Today I've been harvesting the Canadian white. This is what they look like. They're like a brown borlotti, brown speckled borlotti, white with brown speckles. And you harvest them when they're at this sort of yellowy pinky stage if you want to have them semi-dry, demi-sec. And then on the right are exactly the same variety, but these are for drying. So we've actually got plenty of seed for next year already. So the ones on the right I will dry and then pop in the freezer when bone dry for 3 days to kill any bean fly in there, and then take them out, leave them in the fridge in a glass jar, and we will eat those by reconstituting them over the winter months. Where these here, with these lovely fat beans, will just go in and they'll only need about 8 minutes cooking, so they'll generally go into the Instant Pot or the stew when we add the bulk of the vegetables. I've also got 3 more of the Bird's Egg Horticultural, which these beans inside are at the same stage as these are here. They will be again frozen out of their pods for adding into soups and stews without having to be reconstituted. And then here are 2 pods which I've let dry of the Bird's Egg Horticultural, and those we will be keeping for seed saving. So I do need to harvest the cannellini beans, the Tarbay beans, and I hope to do that a bit later on. And these are our Tarbay. As you can see, pull one off. Are lovely and white, sort of kidney bean shaped cannellini, I think these are. And these are all being picked for drying and then reconstituting over the winter months, because these really do store really well as a dried bean. So that's it. That's a a nice harvest. Oh, I found one in my pocket. A nice harvest of our Tarbay, really decent harvest of the Canadian white demi-sec, and also some for drying to reconstitute as well. I think the next one is most probably going to be our Shaz's Scarlet Emperor runner beans, and then our Madeira Maroon, which are a lovely maroon bean. But you know what? I'm going to leave it there today. I'll just give you a quick look at the bean frame, the Tarbay and the Canadian white bean frame as it stands at the moment. There are a few beans still on it, but it's looking decidedly bare. Bye.
Good day. It is a rather grey Wednesday afternoon, and as you can see, I'm not at the plot. I'm actually somewhere that you rarely see me. In fact, I don't think you've ever seen me at my desk. So I've got my computer here in front of me. And this is actually my setup for my video calls on Zoom and Teams and all of that when I speak to colleagues. And my mind has been thinking to the growing year to come. It always happens at this time of year, the end of September, beginning of October. I like to try and get ahead with planning. I know a lot of people like to wait until catalogues come through the door and that type of thing. But generally, year on year, I know what I want to grow and what we want to eat. And therefore, I plan around this time of year what we're going to be growing for the next year. And I thought I would just take you through that and the lists that I make. My lists are made sometimes on paper, scrap paper. And then I feed them onto my computer. Well, I don't feed them. That's not like a shredder. I don't feed them onto my computer and they appear. Though, of course, there are those writing pads where that does actually happen. But anyway, let me just switch you over to the screen and then we can get on with what I want to actually show you. Okay, so this is my list, which is actually on Google Docs for no particular reason apart from I use Google Keep, and Google Keep will only open in Google Docs when I want to put it onto a plain background. You can see here 2022 allotment and seeds to save. So these are all the seeds that I am going to be saving or have already saved. Bird's Egg Horticultural, Golden Gate, Tarbay, all beans, Groninger Brussels sprouts, London Market carrot, Golden Sweet Mange 2, Train Driver Mountain Range, and Mr. Bethel's Purple Podded Pea, Poppy, Sweet Pea, and the Sweet Pea from the hedge where the rose is. So these two here, the Groninger and the London Market, I will actually be saving the seed from plants that are growing at the moment and carrots that are growing at the moment, but I will be harvesting the seed for seed saving next year once they have gone to flower. All the others are now already in our seed saving process or already in the fridge. Organic, only going to be buying organic, open pollinated or sustainable seeds. If we do have others that are left over, old seed, then we will be using them even if they're not organic. We're using smaller suppliers again this year. You can see here Beans and Herbs, Pennard Plants, Tamar Organics and Vital Seeds. We may add a few more into that. Any seeds I'm not using will go to the Free Seed Company. I'll put the address below. And then this is my sort of key. Maybe I should put key there. So old equals old seeds in the fridge. OSS is own save seed. SS is save seed. B is seed or things like garlic that I've bought but not received. R means that I've received it and therefore it will be most likely in the fridge. And then question mark is sort of literally, question mark, like this with the aubergine. Will I be growing aubergine next year or not? I don't know at the moment. Going into our beans, we'll have Gigantes. Vivi is giving us some of her save seed. So Vivi SS means Vivi save seed. Golden Gate, we've got some old seed left over from Vital Seeds, and we're also saving our own. So that's OSS, and using some of that seed in a seed swap. We're doing the same with Rock and Core. We're saving it ourselves. And then these here are for eating as a pod. And then these beans here are for, as it says, pod and drying. So eating as a pod and also drying. And you can see the varieties there: Bird's Egg Horticultural, Canadian White, Madeira Maroon, and Shaz's Runner Beans. Beetroot. So the D. Chioggia I showed you the other day, we've received that, so that's got an R. We've received it from Tamar Organics. Then I want Burpees Golden, which we'll likely get from Vital Seeds, which is why I put a question mark. Another one, Golden, which we got last year from Beans and Herbs, and Ukrainian Organic from the Heritage Seed Library. I've got a feeling we've still got some of those left, so I will have to look in our fridge for those. And then Bicoris, which is a bog standard red beetroot. Brassicas, Cavallo Nero, old seed. We've got Dazzling Blue Kale. That, I think we still have seed from Vital Seeds, so I'm going to check that. And obviously we have our own saved seed of Portuguese cabbage. Vivi is very kindly giving us some of her broad beans, which were originally, I think, Bunyard's exhibition. No, Aquadolce Claudia, I think they were. But we may be buying some more Bunyard's exhibition, which is one that I quite like. Luster Otono, really that shouldn't be in there because they were just ones that we bunged in by the sunflower bed to test the allelopathic response. Brussels sprout should have an R. So that's Groninger, which I've already bought and received from Tamar Organics, though we are going to be doing our own seed saving next year. Calendula, carrots. We're doing Amsterdam forcing this year. We did it a couple of years ago and I've already bought that and received that. London Market is the one that we got from the Heritage Seed Library last year. I don't think we've got any more seed left of that. And that's one of the varieties of carrots, in fact, the only variety of carrots that we're going to see if we can save seed from next year. In terms of chard, 5 colours and bright lights, I need to check inside the box to see whether we've actually got any. Chicory, we've got old seed of Pala Rossa and Witloof. Courgette, I think we've still got some golden yellow left from Pennard that we got earlier this year, though I'm going to have to check. Cucumber will be cucumber seeds that we've got from Vivi. They're old ones that we already have. They were actually given to us by Vivi earlier this year and I lost them, though they were actually always in the box. Fennel, 2 types of fennel there, one from Patricia of Sow and Grow, Enochia, that seed that she saved quite a few years ago now. Garlic, Messidrome, Thermidrone and Primor. That's the one that, these are the 3 that one of our subscribers wanted us to grow and they've very kindly bought those. And then we've got here Messidrome. Sorry, they bought us Thermidrome, Primor and Messidor. and the Messidrome is from our own Save Seed. I think all of these are actually soft neck varieties. Leek, old seed, lots of different varieties of lettuce, lovage, bog standard lovage, and that's old seed. Mange 2, our golden sweet, we've got some own Save Seed there. Bethel's purple podded, Oregon sugar pod. I've got more from Grow Seed, I'm sure, so that's why that's got a question mark. I need to check that. And then Train Driver Mountain Range. 2 types of parsley. We'll be growing Tender and True next year for parsnips. Not sure where we'll get the seed from. I did get it from Vital Seeds this year, and then we passed that on because that seed that doesn't last very long. Peppers, Orange Bell from Vivi, we've still got some seed left. Paprika peppers from Vivi and the Morrison's Yellow Long. Perpetual spinach, I'm sure we've still got some left. The perpetual spinach tends to last for a good many years. Potatoes, we'll be doing Colleen again, which was new to us this year. These are early, and then we're also going to do some Anya, which Vivi has suggested. Squash, Cheeky Prince from the seed Jay sent earlier this year. Uchiki Curry, a butternut squash. You know, didn't do a butternut squash this year. That's just mad. An Oregon Homestead Sweetmeat, which is sort of not really done well for us this year, but I'm going to give it another go next year. Swede, we've got two varieties of old seed, Wilhelmsberger and Brora. Sweet potatoes, let's put a question mark there. Lots of different tomatoes, turnips, and then our wild ransoms, our wild garlic will be coming up as well. I've got a list of seed suppliers here, which most have got a link on them. And then I also keep a list of thoughts for the following year. So garlic, we might try Valaletho next year. Lettuce, Reuben's Red is a variety that Vivi particularly likes, so looking at that. A couple of other types of lettuce. Tomato, that one of our friends has suggested. So yeah, you know, I'm already thinking here about not next year's growing, but the year after. And then I keep a list of everything that I've grown in previous years as well, as you can see. So that's our list up here for 2022. My thoughts on what we're going to be growing next year, i.e. October 21 to September 22. And it will refine itself over the coming months. But I think that's basically where I think we're going to be. I don't really want to grow any more vegetables, any more types of vegetables. I don't really want to grow any more varieties of these types of vegetables unless something is really quite exciting. But you know, we're always open to us changing our minds. Right, I will leave it there, and I'll see you another day for another segment. Bye.
Good day. I've changed angle because of the sun, but this buddleia was just getting in the way. It had finished flowering. It's not the perfect time of year to cut it down. Prefer to do it in sort of January or February. However, as a use for sort of pollinators, its time was over, and for the sake of it getting in my way every day when I'm down here, I decided to cut it back. As you can see, I've left quite a bit of it in there, and I may cut that down to the ground in end of January, beginning of February, somewhere around there. And then, I mean, the reason I was doing it is because we need to start thinking again about winter jobs. And I think you can see how that buddleia there is beginning to impact physically rather than just via shadow on the polytunnel. So I'm marking that down as a job to do next week, because we want to try and keep that polytunnel for at least another year. But it is a glorious day. You can see my shadow there. Well, it's a glorious day at the moment anyway, but it's a bit breezy, so let's just get into the shed. So yes, a gloriously sunny day. I just noticed I've got a sunbeam coming through a slat on my face, but it'll have to be like that, because if we were outside you might not be able to hear me. So it's that time of year. I've already got notes on paper and notes on my Google Keep, which is Keep Notes electronically, that I know I want to do over the winter months. And even though I'm going to mark down that I've cut back that buddleia by the bed, I'm still going to keep a note that at the beginning of February I'll most probably cut it down to the ground. It hasn't been cut right back to the ground for a couple of years, and certainly the one by the side of the polytunnel hasn't been cut right down to the ground for, well, since I've been on that side of this plot, which is 5 years now. Gosh, is it 5 years? I think it's 5 years. I'll double check that. Is it 4 years? No, this is our fifth growing year. As we go into October, our fifth year begins. Gosh, doesn't time fly? And of course it's then is it the third year on here? Is it the third year on this side of the plot? It must be, mustn't it? Yeah, it must be. Gosh, where has that time gone? I mean, I sometimes I really just get stumped by, space and time, basically. Space and time, i.e. outer space and time. Anyway, that's it for this week's A Week at the Plot. I know it's Wednesday morning. For those on Planet Vegetarian, you'll be seeing this on Sunday, by which time we'll have actually visited Mum in Guernsey and be back at home. So we knew this trip was coming up, so I've compacted a number of jobs into a few days. But you know what? That's what A Week at the Plot is about. It's not necessarily about doing something on the plot every day, but it's doing things on the plot each week that move you forward, that move the structure and the maintenance of the plot forward, and also, of course, one's growing forward. Yeah, and I have got one more job to do before I go home and edit this into A Week at the Plot and do all of that with YouTube. And that is to swap out the trays without holes for trays with holes. So these are the gravel trays that are holding our lettuce and our Portuguese cabbage seedlings and our chard seedlings, because we're due a lot of rain over the coming days. I mean, a real lot of rain, it looks like. So it looks as though Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are going to be very wet days. And what I don't want to do is I don't want those seedlings that are growing drowning in too much water. Well, I don't want them drowning at all, of course, but I don't want them sitting in too much water so that the roots begin to rot, because that can happen. You'll remember when I was away a few weeks ago for a board meeting, I'd forgotten to swap out the holes with trays for the holes without trays. In that period of time, we were having quite a lot of warm weather. So because I didn't swap the trays the other way round, some of the seedlings began to dry out, particularly the lettuce. But you know what? They're doing absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now, take out the gravel trays with holes, and no, take off the gravel trays without holes and put in gravel trays with holes, so that when the rain does come down, it'll keep the soil nice and moist for the seedlings, the compost there, but it will have a way of draining away rather than the seedlings sitting in water. So yeah, there we are. That's it for this week's A Week at the Plot. I've got a few of my days muddled up. I know when I was doing that piece yesterday, I said it's a Wednesday afternoon. It was actually Tuesday afternoon. That's when I was sitting at my desk looking at the seeds that we need for next year for next year's growing season. So yeah, I don't know. My mind. I suppose when you've got things coming up, and lots in your head, your mind gets a bit muddled up occasionally. But there we are. It's a glorious day now, though. What it will be later, I'm not sure. But whatever the week brings in this coming week for you, I hope it's good. And I'll see you very soon for more segments of A Week at the Plot on Planet Vegetaria. And obviously another Week at the Plot upload next week on YouTube. Bye.